I tell people a lot, like you need to have goals, but you got to be careful. I think being great every day is way more important than having these lofty goals, because many of those things are out of control, your control.
Yeah.
The only thing you can control is your effort and your attitude. And, I know that's something that people say a lot, but it's true. So I think we have that in our DNA that, we're willing to take measured risks, but we also have long-term views. And that's one of the things I love about this company. We don't get paid on quarterly results. We get paid on the long-term growth of the company. And I think that's a very different culture and different mindset from other car companies. And what's really been good for me is now understanding car dynamics at a different level, so that, when I'm talking to chief engineers about some of the great new GR products, for instance, that we're bringing to market, I can give them like candid feedback as a driver that I don't think I would have been able to do before. Hi, my name is Andrew Gilleland. I'm the Senior Vice President of Automotive Operations for Toyota North America, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
What a pleasure to be with my friend again. Not often enough, and when we're together, it's not long enough that we're together. But Andrew, first of all, welcome back from Japan, because I know you just returned, and welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Great to be with you. The state of the world is constantly in flux. The state of the automotive space is always changing. You've spent more than 3 decades inside Toyota and Lexus, from field operations to national leadership. What has kept you inspired through that journey and all of the chaos?
I think, Jason, for me, it's just I love what I do. I've loved it from the first day I started with the company. And I get up every day and I'm happy to come to work. I'm energized. And I think it's the dynamic nature of the industry that makes it fun. But you can have all the plans in the world, and then you come into the office and, you'll have 5 or 6 big issues that need to get addressed or things you need to do. And so I think it's that diversity that happened all the way, when I started as a field traveler. You're going out and seeing different dealers and you're in different markets. So it's just been this lifelong kind of learning experience in the auto industry. And, frankly, I'm 56 years old and I still feel like a little kid getting to play with cars. So I'm truly blessed. I'm one of those people that never thought I'd be in this job, quite frankly. And it's an honor every day.
What was it you were going to do if you weren't doing this?
That's an interesting story. So I have
Let me hear it.
I have 2 degrees, one in marketing, one in economics. I thought going into banking would be a great idea, and found out pretty quickly, like, this is not a very good fit. And so I skied competitively in college, not on a team, but just with a bunch of buddies, and was skiing all the time. I went to school in Western North Carolina. And I decided I was just going to go out and teach skiing for a couple seasons out in Colorado, and actually met somebody that worked for Toyota at Copper Mountain, and struck up a conversation with the guy.
He was going up the lift, and you were coming down the lift?
No. We had a marketing activation there, and he was checking on it, which I didn't realize at the time what that meant. It means go there and go skiing for a couple days. But he asked, what I was doing, and I explained to him that, I had started to work in retail banking, and that wasn't for me, and I was just going to teach skiing for a couple seasons and kind of figure it out. This was in 1992. The market for jobs wasn't great. And he said, well, are you interested in the car business? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love cars. I grew up in North Carolina. I love racing. He goes, well, I'll get you an interview. I'm not getting you a job. Just send me a cover letter. So to his credit, he did do that, and went through a bunch of interviews, actually more interviews than most normal hires go through, because I came through a sort of non-traditional path. So, basically every interview that I went through, and there was probably 8 or 10 of them, like every single time I told people, look, you're probably going to see better resumes, people with better pedigrees from an education standpoint, but I will absolutely outwork everybody. And I won't let you down or embarrass you. Just give me an opportunity. That's all I've ever asked for. And you know what? He did. And the rest has sort of been, the history of taking opportunities and working hard and somewhat feeling like I'm lucky to be here, quite frankly. And so I think that's also driven some of my being willing to take risks and chances throughout my career and doing different things throughout my career.
That was field operations. Is that what that was?
Yeah, it was, well, it started out as, we go out as trainees, right? And I'm sitting around a building in California. And I mean, there's people from Dartmouth and Michigan State. And I'm like, hey, my name's Andrew Gilleland. I'm from Appalachian State. And the needle just went off the record. Everybody turns around. And that was my first imposter syndrome moment within the company. I'm like, uh-oh, I'm going to have to probably work twice as hard to keep up with these folks. And, I always had a strong work ethic from my dad. He was pretty hard on me as a youngster. It was already built for that and built to take chances and risks and push. I didn't grow up, without, but I didn't grow up with money. I wanted to make sure I could take care of my family. Those were my two main goals, right? Do something I love and take care of my family. If I could do that, I'd be really happy.
Where did you think how far did you think you could go? Where could you end up?
To be honest, it's funny you mentioned this. I was just talking to a young person the other day that's a newly hired trainee. Yeah. And I told them, I said, when I first got to the regional offices, this was back in the day, like the general manager, like, hey, go get my car washed. I'm like, not a problem. And I remember calling my dad and saying, hey, I think I might be the highest paid car washing guy in the United States. But I was happy to do that. Yeah. Right. I mean, it was that or do spreadsheets. I'm more than happy to go get your car washed. But it never bothered me. None of that stuff ever bothered me. I was like, hey, if that's what you want me to do, great. I tell people a lot, like, you need to have goals, but you got to be careful. I think being great every day is way more important than having these lofty goals, because many of those things are out of control, your control. Yeah. The only thing you can control is your effort and your attitude. And, I know that's something that people say a lot, but it's true. So I tried to keep my expectations, frankly, pretty low, because I just couldn't believe I was working for this great company.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. You've seen so much transformation within the company, and the pendulum has swung. We've talked about it on this program many times. Everybody was all in on electrification, and now, and then the rules change. And all Toyota does is just stay the course. And I'll never forget when Bob Carter, obviously former head of Toyota sales in the U.S. and head of North America for a while, when Bob talked about the move from California to Texas, it was outlined with this 50, 100-year vision. Very few companies in the automotive space talk about visions that go out decades. You mentioned setting goals. Yeah. What's that been like to be within a company that, despite all of the many things that change around you, it stays just on the course and steady?
Yeah, I mean, I think to the outsiders, it looks on the course and steady. It takes a lot of work. I think one of the things, the Toyota family years ago sort of made a transition from making looms to cars. So we're used to doing things that are really uncomfortable. I'm quite sure when Kiichiro and Sakichi Toyota were talking, he was like, you want to do what? You want to build cars?
Right.
Because the family was really successful in the loom business. So I think we have that in our DNA that, we're willing to take measured risks, but we also have long-term views. And that's one of the things I love about this company. We don't get paid on quarterly results. We get paid on the long-term growth of the company. And I think that's a very different culture and different mindset from other car companies. And luckily, we've been successful enough where we can diversify risk, through powertrains. Like, we built the Prius, right? And I can remember, getting in one of those things and, whatever it was, early 90s, and driving it home. I was working in Chicago, and I'm like, this is going to be a big problem. Like, I'm having trouble selling Previas and Supras in the winter. Mm-hmm. This thing's going to be something different. And to see the evolution of that car and where it's at today, it's just amazing, right? When you really look at it. And we did that because we cared about the environment. And I don't think that any senior executive in the car industry, hopefully, They don't think that, it isn't important to take care of the environment. I believe that all of us are trying to work together to make an impact in a positive way. And that's certainly what started us on the pathway of hybrid. And now we've moved into EVs and we still have very efficient internal combustion engines. So we've been blessed as a company to kind of diversify the risks that have been in the market.
Your dealer network, your dealer sentiment, everything that we talk about on a regular basis is always so sky high.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be a Toyota or a Lexus dealer.
Yeah.
That's got to be something that resonates through the entire company. I mean, that's got to be a bit of a mission statement for you as well. Let's keep what we have there.
Yeah. It's
our
funny
ethos and our,
yeah. We just finished the NADA survey, right? And Lexus and Toyota were 1 and 2.
That's right.
And it's just cultural. Like from the day you start in this company, particularly in the operations side of the business, the dealer is the customer, and you need to be focused on taking care of the dealers. And it's interesting because, when I first went out, Steve McDaniels, who's a large dealer up in Minnesota, my first assignment was up in Minneapolis. I'm from North Carolina. It's like -30. Like, this is not comfortable. I don't know these guys. And I was putting in a parts EPC, electronic parts catalog. Like, I was up in the rafters, running wires, trying to get this thing to work. And Steve walked in, he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to get this thing to work." "Who are you?" I said, "I'm your parts rep." He started kind of getting, he goes, "As soon as you get done, I want to talk to you." So I walked in his office and he said, "Hey, I appreciate you and your effort and your work. Not many people would do that. Let me help you learn the job." Because I had told him, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, they hand you a planner, and at this point it was an atlas, and here's your dealers, and get after it. And what I learned
McNally.
Oh yeah. Like the old, I mean, you're riding down the road trying to figure out where you're going. But what I learned very early in my career was the dealers can teach you. And I was smart enough to figure out, and we have good dealers, and then we have great dealers, and I could see the difference. And so I would spend time with them. And I was honest with them. I think that also helped. Like, "Hey, I don't understand this. Explain this to me." And it helped me, throughout my career. And even today, like, I still call, there's 40 or 50 guys, that I'll call and, like, "Hey, this is what we're thinking. How does this sound? Does this make sense?" So that relationship that the dealers have with us and we have with them, I think, is at the core of, why we've been successful in many ways, because it's family, because we care about each other in ways that I don't know that other brands have that same relationship.
I've been exposed and around to different dealers and different manufacturers and the nexus between those two groups. And I have never seen what I have witnessed inside a room when Toyota leadership talks to their dealers. It is a different language, Andrew.
Yeah, I think part of it, Jason, is authenticity.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot get up there and here's your bullshit dealers. They'll see right through it. If you're not authentic with them and you're honest with them, and you lose that trust, that's when all the problems, in my mind, really begin. And so we've always been straight with our dealers, even in difficult times. We've over communicated. We've had a lot of challenges over my career. But the one thing that remained constant was over communication, and making sure everybody understood what we're doing, in the direction we're going, and making sure that we were getting feedback from them that what we were doing was the right thing. I mean, we have, kaizen, right? It's a real thing, right? It's constantly improving. So you've got to be open to that. And look, we all have egos and insecurities, and it's just different here, right? Like, we are a team. We're trying to support one another. It's not perfect. I'm not trying to make us out to be a perfect organization, but it's different. I mean, when I say I love who I work with, I mean that, and I love the dealers. And again, I'm very blessed to be able to do what I do.
Well, former Ford CEO Alan Mulally had to get up and express that to Ford once when he first joined.
Yep.
That's not anything that needs to be communicated from Toyota to its dealers, because they know.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
everything you do.
I tell people all the time, like, listen, your actions mean way more than your words.
Yeah.
Don't judge me by what I say, judge me by what I do. Um, and I mean that. And I think that is really important. Every day is showing up and being authentic. And I'm far from perfect. I make mistakes and I tell people quite a bit. I learn more about myself and what I want to be and who I want to be by losing. You don't learn anything from winning. What do you learn? I won, right? When you don't do something successfully or you fail at something, which you try to avoid, no question, but when you really sit down and like, okay, what could I have done differently? How could we have handled this differently? And then taking personal accountability. I think that's really important. No matter where you're at in an organization, is you got to own it. And so again, that creates this culture of accountability in our side of the business. Um, and it's special for sure.
I was with a dealer last week who talked about trying to buy Toyota stores, and that they were looking at multiples that were 8, 9, 10x. There've been record numbers that have been talked about in various places. Maybe more to come. What do you make of all that? Is that, I mean, there's an opportunity,
Yeah.
for some real generational wealth here. If you're one of the folks who got in early and who may want to make some different decisions. What a testament to the brand.
Yeah, it's funny because I was lucky again, early in my career being in the Midwest. I mean, we had like 3, 4, 5% market share. I had Detroit had 2% market share, Michigan. And so I watched the franchise grow. I used to pull up to places, Jason, and like the lights wouldn't be on at our store. This is like down Southern Illinois and Indiana. They were big Chevy and Ford dealers, and they probably bought the Toyota franchise so the guy down the street couldn't buy it. But I learned early on in my career, like, don't tell people you're coming. And I'd show up and there'd be people scrambling out of the Chevy store to come over. And I fast forward to today, and now in many cases, the Toyota franchise is the anchor of that platform for those, because some of those guys are still around. Sort of joke with them, like, hey, you remember I pulled up to your store and all your people are running out?
Yep.
So, it's interesting to see the value of the stores grow the way that it has. I think it's reflective of people's view of the brand, right? Will the franchise value increase, which is one of the NADA scores that we look at? And the answer is, we're above all the other brands. I think that's because we're making good decisions. I think it's because we have a clear strategy. And I think we have the financial wherewithal to deal with all the chaos that's going on in the marketplace today.
All right, chaos in the marketplace. What's at the top of your list? I mean, we could talk about a lot of things. Should we?
I mean, you name it. Which one do you want to talk? Government regulation or tariffs or
Well, let's talk
customer
tariffs,
taste, all right? Tariffs.
We can't go a day without talking tariffs, Andrew. So
Yeah, tariffs are obviously a bit problematic. Really, they end up being a tax on consumers.
Yeah.
We're very thankful that we've got some clarity from 27.5 down to 15. We can manage our business on that. I think the next big shoe to drop, frankly, is the USMCA, which I feel confident will get taken care of. I mean, it was something that came out of the Trump administration in his first administration. So that's the next big one. And I don't think it's just Toyota. Obviously, some of our competitors have pretty big footprints in Mexico and Canada as well. So that's the next one we need some clarity on, Jason, so we can manage our business. We're trying to move with the market from a pricing standpoint. So our prices have gone up, but clearly not 15%. And I'm hopeful that, we'll be able to manage the supply chain and our actual production and try to minimize pushing that price down to the customers. I mean, we're at $50,000 or $49,000 transactionally. That a third of customers today can afford to buy a new car. And I think that's a big challenge. Luckily with Toyota, we stayed in the sedan business. So things like Corolla allow a price point, and we have some other things that we're thinking about that have been in the media that are at, sub $30,000. I think that's really important. When you look at the numbers, when somebody buys a Corolla, 58 to 60% of the time they come back and buy another Toyota, and it's a Camry or a 4Runner or a RAV. So I think the other big thing that we're really trying to analyze is value chain, right? People talk about it a lot, but what it means to us is, hey, we may not necessarily make a lot of money on a Corolla, but if you look at the value chain associated with across a lifetime of purchasing, which is 4 or 5 times for normal consumers, we can have a pretty good business based on that. And so I'm constantly pushing as the sales guy, like we need a price point, to keep those people in. And TCUV, our certified used program, plays a part in that. But you got to get people into the brand, and then the dealers who are great engage the customer and take great care of them, and that sort of all works together to keep people in the family.
Yeah, and affordability. You hit on an important topic that comes up a ton on this program. It's been a concern for a number of years now. It continues to be a larger concern. And as you mentioned, you stuck with a segment that many had abandoned. Once again, long-term planning, long-term thinking, options. And whether it's a propulsion system or whether it's the type of vehicle that you drive, you've got, and you like to say, and actions, not words, you've got something for everybody in a number of ways, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm really proud of the company. Cooper Erickson, who's our senior vice president of product planning. He's quite the car guy. And, him and I spend a lot of time bouncing ideas off each other and looking at our global portfolio. Some cars just you can't get into the US because of safety or regulatory or emissions. But we have a big portfolio globally. And that gives us good ideas like, oh, well, this is interesting. Maybe this is something we could bring into the US market. So we're always looking at that. But, right now, to your point, affordability is something that is on all of our minds, along with the regulatory environment and how do we participate in that in a constructive way. It's difficult, as you know, and other brands are struggling, and we are too, to figure out what does regulation look like, administration, and, we decide today we're going to build a car. It's 5 years, 4 to 5 years. So it makes it very difficult, when these regulations change and things, and I can't control that. So you're having to make some bets. And luckily, I think over time we've made educated bets that have paid off very well for us.
Well, you've placed your chips in a number of different areas on the board.
Right.
That's the answer. You haven't pushed all in one place, as some have, and you haven't pulled all out.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Chinese, decades and decades ago, a small brand from Japan came into the American market, and because there was an opportunity, the 1970s with petroleum crisis and affordability issues, Toyota did well.
Yep.
Decades later, a couple of brands from Korea did well. Do the Chinese have an opportunity if things swing in their favor from an entry standpoint to fill that gap as well in a very similar way?
I think the short answer is yes. I have Mexico as part of my responsibility. So if you go down to Mexico today, you'll see the influence of the Chinese brands. The thing that I get a bit concerned about is I'm not sure that I'm competing against a company. I feel like I'm competing against a government, and that's a different thing altogether. And I think that's what some of the concerns that frankly our government has had around allowing access for the Chinese. So I want to be careful because I don't need to start an international kerfuffle, but I think we have to be clear about who we're competing with, right? And I think we're willing to compete on a fair and level playing field. And I think every brand in the globe would do the same. But it's going to be a big challenge. I mean, you're dealing with some different dynamics when you deal with Chinese brands that you're not dealing with some of the more traditional car brands.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's switch gears, go into racing.
Yeah.
You have been your name is everywhere. I don't know if you know this or not, in various racing forums. I mean, you're a racer, a racer at heart. You want to spend as much time as possible on the track. Has that always been the case?
Um, yeah,
Or
I
where
mean,
did you pick it up?
it started with my dad. Like we used to go
Yeah.
to, to Wake County Speedway in Raleigh, and watch dirt cars. So it's always been a part of my life. My dad was a huge fan of the Indy 500. He started going in the 50s. Finally took me when I graduated from school. Couldn't understand why he'd never take me. And then I went and I'm like, oh, okay, I can see why I wasn't coming. Um, for any of those who've been to the Indy 500 and know what the
Yes.
snake pit is, I
Snake
think
pit.
I think
I
my
knew
dad
that
was
was
in the
coming.
middle of that. He'd been to Watkins Glen for the F1 race, been in the middle of that. Unfortunately, my dad was one of those kind of old school guys that didn't really talk to me a lot. But boy, I think he had some stories that he I wish he would have shared with me. But that
Yeah.
started it. And I've just always been a fan of racing, to be honest. I love the competitiveness of it. I love the team aspect of it. I love the engineering that goes into it. But I like the emotion of it, right? The noise and the sound. And I had a chance to go to Le Mans this year for the first time, and it's emotional for me. Like, grew up as a kid watching this stuff, and I'm like standing there on the grid, and it's hard for me to believe. And so it's just been a part of my life. The racing aspect itself, I had never really done. Like I'd gone to skip, like all of us. I've been to 50 skip barber classes, Bondurant. Like I've been through a bunch of performance driving schools. And even our company makes us get a performance driving license so that we can drive
Hmm.
prototypes.
Wow.
So that class was the first time I was in a semi-prepared race car. They're using old Scion FRSs, as a matter of fact, which is today's 86. And I'm like, this is kind of cool, right? And when you're working as much as I do, it's hard to like justify like, oh, let me go buy, a Miata or something and put it on the track. So we got into GR Cup, right? So GR Cup is sort of our beginning of our ladder in our motorsports program, and motorsports is under me. And I was like, well, if I'm sort of paying for it, which it isn't me, it's Toyota, like I should do this. How hard can it be? So I went down to Skip Barber, got my license in Austin. And honestly, I had no idea what I was getting into. Like you just, people think they can be race car drivers. And let me tell
Right.
you, they can't. It's
No,
something different.
it's so hard.
It is unbelievably hard. So like
Mentally hard.
I showed up to start doing my training for this, and like all the guys, the professional coaches, and they were like, dude, we're so proud of you. Like this is, and I'm like, what are these? I don't, why are they saying this stuff? Well, now I understand. Like they knew what I didn't know, which was you are crazy to be doing this at 56 years old with zero experience. You're going to have a problem and you're either going to get hurt or damage a car. So I think they were amazed that like I could go out and not wreck the car, actually finish races. And it's just been this building. And what's really been good for me is now understanding car dynamics at a different level, so that when I'm talking to chief engineers about some of the great new GR products, for instance, that we're bringing to market, I can give them like candid feedback as a driver that I don't think I would have been able to do before. So I don't know how long I'll do it. I'm very blessed that the company allows me to do it. But I love it. It's funny because Aki always says like you shouldn't be a car executive if you don't know how to race a car.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that was sort of my excuse. I'm like, well, Akio thinks,
Well, I was
and
going to say
did it on a lark.
you're in the right company, because between Akio's efforts on the track and some others who have been in and around leadership, um, Sato-san also enjoys
Yeah,
racing too, doesn't he? I mean,
yeah,
there is a pedigree and a bright red line that runs through Toyota, which
yeah,
a lot of people might not know, especially if they think about a Corolla, for example, that is
yeah,
like serious racing. I mean,
yeah,
and you mentioned Le Mans, and the rapid level of success that has occurred there within the company is also remarkable. I
yeah,
mean, you're wearing the T-shirt right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. The GR brand, which has this great history, we're bringing some new products to market, including a very special car here that we'll announce later this year. Um, but the GR brand itself, the history behind it, and once you understand it, creates a really authentic story around performance. These aren't badge cars. These are performance designed, engineered, track tested, race tested, and it goes all the way back, frankly, to the 2000 GT. So as you know, and some of your listeners may know, the 2000 GT was really Toyota's first supercar, quote unquote. That car was developed by a man named Naruse. Mr. Naruse started out as kind of an accountant in the company, somehow ended up in the engineering section. He went on to go into a department called Engineering Department 7, which was the people that developed our first Can-Am car. It was called the Toyota 7. Then he went on to become our master driver. Now, this is where all this stuff connects, right? Akio was sort of a mid-level employee working through the company, and somehow met Mr. Naruse, and Mr. Naruse told him, like, you have zero ability to tell me how a car should be without being a performance driver. And it started this relationship with him where he developed Akio as a driver. So that's where you can pick up, and you can see this, the Gazoo Racing, which was just a website that Akio was doing used cars with in Japan. But they started training together. And that started this pathway of Akio wanting to develop performance cars that represented Toyota. And so that's where the LFA came out of, right? And so you may know Mr. Naruse passed away actually at Nürburgring while he was developing the LFA. So this next car is the next iteration. So every 20 years we come up with a car. The car I was describing that we're going to bring to market is the next logical, it's not an LFA replacement, but it's a proper sports car that I'm excited to talk to you and others about later this year. So it's in our DNA in an authentic way is my point. We're not just badging cars and calling them performance. We are putting them on the track. We are racing them. We're breaking them. We're fixing them. And that's going into the road going cars. And so when you buy an 86, which I would tell you, I think is the finest sports car in the market for the price point, you're getting all that engineering that we've developed through racing. And so it goes on through the lineup with the Corolla and the Supra, et cetera.
Well, and there's so much success to talk about on the racing side. And we were fortunate enough probably 3.5 years ago to have Joe Gibbs on this program.
Yeah.
And when you look at now where you are, even just sitting here today, the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs, the round of 8, I don't have to tell you anything. I mean, you got Denny Hamlin in there. You got Christopher Bell. You've got Chase Briscoe. I mean, Toyota and Joe Gibbs are all over that final round. It's kind of everywhere. You look around, and we've had Toyota NHRA drivers on the program. I mean, you go from all ends of the spectrum, and there's a Toyota logo somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, it allows us, again, we don't just do it to put our logo on a car. We're doing it because we're learning about cars. And that learning comes back and is put into the road going cars that customers can buy, right? And that technology that we learn. So, there's a reason we do it. NASCAR is a great tool for us, not only from what we are as a brand in the United States, but also, like, again, the technology. I think people look at NASCAR that aren't really familiar. They're like, oh, they all look the same. And let me tell you something, the engineering that goes into those things is amazing, whether that's suspension, engine, aero, and we learn stuff, and that stuff is then passed along. It's funny, I was just in Japan, like you said, last week, and there's 2 young men that work in TRD, which is our company that manages all that. We put 2 young men over there. They're on international assignments, and they're embedded with GR company, so we can create better communication back to TMC. And that information is technical in nature, it's design in nature, but now we have people embedded so we can improve the communication around it.
Yeah, it is in the DNA, as we've said, and pretty remarkable. Go back to your early days again, if we could. A lot of people, some people may not remember Scion, and you're sitting in your office with a Scion sign behind you, just to remember where it all began. And That was an interesting experiment, wasn't it, Andrew? I mean, it was going to be a car that was going to appeal to young folks, and I was there for the launch of it. And Jim Farley, who now leads
Yes.
Ford, was running that inside the company. What'd you learn from Scion that could be applied elsewhere?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot. It's interesting because you mentioned Jim,
Yeah.
like Mark Templin, who's our COO, worked there.
Yep.
Jack,
Yep.
who retired recently, worked there. I worked
Yep.
there. David Christ, who runs the Toyota division, worked there. So it's funny because most of our senior leadership team actually, and Scion lived for what, 5, 7 years, whatever it was,
Yep.
went through that channel. And I think what we all learned, first of all, we were able to now focus on young customers, right? The baby boomers got us to where we were at. And we knew that that wasn't going to be what kept us going. So we had to appeal to younger consumers. And so what we learned through all that is like, okay, they're not that different from their parents, which we were scared to death, like not your father's Oldsmobile. So
Hmm.
they still valued the QDR, the quality, dependability, reliability of Toyota, but it just wasn't cool enough. And so we learned about customization. We learned about accessorization. We learned about personalization. And remind people, don't forget, these people are now in their 40s, right? It's gone by like that, but they're the people that are buying Sequoias and Tundras, and they're buying Lexus product. And what we learned is, our brand was really, really strong, and we need to lean into that reputation, but we need to be no more boring cars, as Akio would say.
Right.
I think we
Right.
learned that through there. And we learned about customization, and we learned about how to market differently. Right today, as you know, in the media landscape for automotive marketing is completely different than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Right, the traditional linear is still important, but now you're into digital and social and influencing different groups. And I think we learned all that. But the one thing we learned is to be a little irreverent. Like we were sort
Hmm.
of over there away from everybody, and we were able to do things that larger Toyota couldn't or wouldn't. And I think we learned to be a little bit of mavericks without going too far off the deep end, which, typically that was me and Jim. I was in Jim's office, like, what are you doing? But we pushed boundaries together, and it was interesting working with Jim, and I'm very, very happy for him and the success that he's had. He pushed a lot in a good way. And so it was a great experience, I think, for all of us about, sort of don't always do things the way that we've done them, because if you do, you're going to have a problem later on. So
Well, and now maybe you're borrowing a little bit from that playbook when you update a brand like the Corolla Cross,
yeah,
right? Where you're trying to get some young buyers in, and like you said, things, areas that are more affordable, I guess you would
yeah,
say.
yeah.
Yeah. Lexus, what you say Lexus, and it almost has its own meaning. It's something is the Lexus of something else, and people know what that means. How do you keep refreshing Lexus? What's your mission on Lexus? What does Lexus need to do?
Well, unfortunately, I was running Lexus division when we had a bit of a product drought. So
Hmm.
I don't think that, again, I wish I could say I was Henry Ford. I'm not. Guess what? Product matters. Um, if you don't have great product, no amount of marketing or telling people it's something that it isn't is going to work. So, I think the thing that has set Lexus apart in the luxury channel from 1989 until today is product. The engineering that goes into it, the design that goes into it, being relentlessly focused on that has been really important. And, things like TX, we only build TX here in the US, right?
Hmm.
And that's a challenge, right? When you're dealing with global TMC, they don't like having single plants. One of the great things about our company is our manufacturing flexibility, right? We can change lines, we can run different cars down lines. Well, the TX is so big, the only place you can build it is Indiana.
Right.
And to convince TMC that, like, hey, we can make this business model work on a car that you're only going to sell in the US, was a big challenge, but it's been a huge hit. So I think it's relentless focus on product and the customer, and then the experience that dealers give to Lexus customers is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that also matters to luxury buyers. they're discerning and they want to be treated a certain way. And a certain way doesn't mean the same. It's that personal relationship, Jason, like understanding you and how you want to be dealt with and how I want to be dealt with. Our dealers just do a great job with that. So I think that, you add product and you add dealers that are, I think, the best dealers in the luxury space. And man, that's a winning combination all day long.
I saw that sports coupe concept that was in Pebble Beach. I mean, just incredible. Speaking of product, the good stuff coming, at least in concept form. Yeah.
Yes. Some of that stuff's going to come to fruition. So can't tell you which ones.
Sure.
But we're constantly looking at that. And there's some other cool stuff that I'm really excited about we're working on that are going to be some amazing products that I think are going to really have huge customer acceptance. So I'm excited about the future of Lexus. It's very, very good.
A couple more things, Andrew.
Yep.
Akio Toyota. Give us a window for our listeners who may not have had much exposure to Akio,
Yep.
but they've heard of him. They have a concept. We mentioned the racing earlier.
Yep.
And you just returned from Japan. I'm sure you probably bumped into him in the lunchroom. What is life like under Akio Toyota?
It's good. I don't think anybody can argue that the company is better off today than it was 20 years ago when he started. Like there is no doubt about it. Like we are in a much better place with his leadership. Frankly, his leadership started off pretty bumpy, right? We're in the middle of the recall crisis and, coming to Washington, D.C., I'm sure wasn't fun for him, but I think it caused him to stay focused. And it caused him to really want to succeed, him personally, because, his name's on the building. So I think that's the first thing is he's a great car guy. And he's provided great leadership for the company over the last 20 years or however long he's been there. It's interesting because you have Akio, the chairman, and then usually when I see him, it's at a track. So he runs in a series called Super Taiku, which is like an endurance, like IMSA, but a little bit lower.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he and his son both run there. They typically run prototypes where we're developing the cars and they're helping us develop it. My interaction with him is mostly at the track. So I was at the Super Taiku race down at a place called Automotive in southern Japan in July. And you wouldn't know you're talking to the chairman of Toyota, but like such a normal kind of approachable guy at the track. And I saw him with fans and with, taking pictures with kids, and it just, it was good to see because man, that guy's under a lot of pressure. Like, I'm not sure I want that job. That is a lot, right? And so, what we try to do here in the US, is make his life easier, right? So make sure that we are focused on taking care of customers because that's the most important thing. Making sure that we hit our targets. That's the second most important things in generating revenue to, support the future of the company. So he's an interesting guy for sure. And, he's, I think 70, and he's out running around racing. And I dig it. I think that's totally cool. And I think, it's one of the things Jim Farley's doing it right in the Mustang Challenge. I'm trying to get him and Akio together. And do a race together, like bring the Mustang Challenge. We'll bring one of our cars and maybe do it in Australia or the US. And so I hope there's a time where those guys can get together because I just think it's cool that we have people in the industry that are authentically car people. And that's really cool. Even Alan Mulally, I think one of the first things he taught to some of the Ford employees was about Lexus, right? Because he was driving an LS at the time. He was an authentic car. I love these guys that are authentically car guys, that are still passionate about cars and don't just see them as, hey, point A to B.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. AI, how's that changing your world, Andrew?
I mean, I think we're all, Jason, dealing with what does that really mean? So it's it's like everything else. So it's a buzzword. What does it really mean? I think AI for us on the operations side is efficiency and better understanding of the business model, that drives revenue and profitability. So, we can be much smarter about what are we building? And we can use AI to sort of sense what's going on in the market. I mean, we were always sort of using trailing and lagging indicators. Today, you can use AI, like for your website, for instance. You go on our website and you start configuring cars. Well, we can aggregate that and start to understand, okay, this is what customers have been, this is what they're building. Is our manufacturing and build for the next 3 months, is that measured up? That's one example where we can just be more efficient. You may know this, like we build one type of car and we've got to put parts in a warehouse somewhere for 10 years, right? That by law.
Yep.
So the other thing I think it helps you do is be more efficient on supply chain, which is hugely challenging, which we all found out with tariffs. So anything you can do to create stability further down the supply chain where the suppliers can see what they need to do and they can make appropriate investments and tweak their production, creates more efficiency. And through that efficiency, we can control pricing, which is what we talked about earlier. How do we keep cars affordable? Well, if we're a little more efficient and a little more effective at what we're building, hopefully we can hold the line on costs.
You look out.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
When you look out and consider your career, go back to where it all started. What's the evolution? Where does it go before you decide that you want to race just full time all the time and maybe not sit behind a desk in Plano? Where does the industry how does it evolve? Because there's so much talk for so long, Andrew, about fuel cells, and at one point there was going to be a radical Uberization of the world, and then it was going to be, well, we're just going to swap cars and car sharing to some extent. Some of those things, most of those things, actually haven't really panned out.
No,
have they? Things have just kind of stayed the same.
The internet's going to ruin the dealer retail channel. I mean, all that stuff.
Right.
I think for students of the industry like you and I, you need to take those as an input, as one input.
Yep.
And then I think you gotta really think critically about the scale. Like you have to remember, like this business is at peak maturity, at peak scale. So changes are not you can't just change things in 6 months. There's an infrastructure that's created around the entire auto industry, including suppliers and all these people that are employed. So I think we're not just going to wake up one day and everything's going to change, right? I think EV has been the greatest example of that. We know it's important. We know that it's a future, but is it the future? And I would submit to you, I'm not sure, right? We're still not sure about that. So I think you have to look at everything with a critical eye and really use all the knowledge that you have, not get caught up in all that knowledge, because if you just live in the past, you're going to have a problem in the future. But you have to take into account the massive macroeconomics of the auto industry. I think the EU is getting ready to find this out. They've passed some regulations that I think when some of the labor unions over there, which are very different than the UAW here, when they start losing jobs, that's going to be a bit of a problem. And the auto industry is a big part of the economy in Europe.
It's a national crisis then, yeah.
So I think we're sort of out in front of that, with some of the regulatory easing. And I don't want to get into a political discussion clearly, but I think you got to be reasonable about what are the goals. Like I said earlier in the conversation, I think we all care about the environment. I got a 10-year-old kid. I care. So, when I have these conversations with some of my friends, I'm like, you can't tell me I don't care. I mean, I care about Victoria and the future that she's going to inherit. So we need to work on that. But mobility creates opportunity. It creates economic efficiency. It creates a higher standard of living. You can't argue that. And so mobility, whatever form that may take, is going to continue to be part of who we are as human beings and what drives economic success. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. Like figuring it out's the big piece. Like if I had that, then I probably wouldn't be sitting here. To your point, I'd be doing something else. But I love the challenge of it, and I love seeing what we're going to do in the future. And I think, like you said, we've got a lot of chips on the table, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Andrew, thank you so much for being on the program. I really appreciate your your context and walk through a little bit of your history and maybe where we're going. Thank you again.
Yep. Appreciate it. Yep.